Ois Tezayin. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, in the year Tafresh, it started becoming known and spreading the Kontresim of Likkutei, which at Tzemach Tzedek was Magia with his Hagoyes and printing the Alter Rebbe's Mamarim. In addition to Shilas Utshuvas, that was from Likkutei, in addition to his Shilas Utshuvas that the Tzemach Tzedek wrote between him and many Rabbanim, and 3 years later, the Russian government, I'm saying this is a little bit of background, they formed a coalition of Rabbanim, and they try to impact and try to dilute, Rahman al-Itzlan, the chinuch of Yidden. And the Tzemach Tzedek was super active, and he was so active and had such an effect that he sabotaged a lot of the intentions of the government to bring in the Tnuas HaSkala, which were part of those meetings, and the Tzemach Tzedek sidelined them. Once that happened, being that they forced the Tzemach Tzedek initially to stay in Petersburg because they realized the type of impact he has, they wanted him under their watchful eye. However, due to what happened, the Friedrich Rebbe doesn't say what exactly happened, but the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, had a tremendous impact on a group of Kantonistische soldiers which were stationed near Petersburg. Far lasting impact. 5 years later, the Tsar tried to get some of them that were outstanding soldiers to convert, and they said 5 years ago, Bavitch Rebbe was here, and he told us that even if the Tsar tells us we should not convert, Chas v'shalom, he had a tremendous impact, and they realized it's not good to keep him around here. We'd rather have him in small villages. So they sent him back. However, when they sent him, they wanted he should travel around in little villages. They shouldn't go straight b'derech HaMelech. Peter Rebbe says they had a specific intention. I'm not going to share it here. And he went together with my great uncle, Rabbi Yisrael Noyach, which ultimately, after Tzemach Tzedek's passing, opened Chassidus Chabad of Niezhin in the year of Tafresh Dalet, a year later. And he then traveled to Shklov, Moilov, Ragachov, Zlobin, Minsk, Vilna. On his way back, he went through Smargon, Dokshitz, and then he came to Lubavitch through Polotsk and Vitebsk. Now, at the beginning of this journey, when he was in Shklov, his son, Rabbi Yisrael Noyach, told him that there's many Chassidische younger light that are embarrassed to come into Yechidus due to their ruchnistic estate. When the Tzemach Tzedek heard this, the Tzemach Tzedek broke down in a great cry, bitter tears, and he said, "Vos heist mishamtzach." What does that mean? They're embarrassed. Azachvas is again a fashis mamish, when something relates directly to their life itself, their souls itself. Or mishamtzach. How could you be embarrassed when your life is on the line? Going into Yechidus is Negeah ben Nefashis. Another episode from this journey the way back, or maybe it was right after, Rabbi Yisrael Noyach, his son, told his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, that many of the older Chassidim, they see in you the image of the Zayda, the Alter Rebbe. The Tzemach Tzedek, in surprise, said, Avada? Could this taka be? How could that be? But the Zayda is a Chassidische Balabas, a Chassidische homeowner, a Chassidische younger man, that of the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim. When he stood near another Yid, that person started feeling better, just from his midas toivus of the Balabas. When a Chassidish younger man, as a flakumen in an art, when he would reach a place, right away people would gather around him like bees around a honeycomb, a beanstalk, a beehive. The Chassidish, this old description, the Tzemach Tzedek is describing the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim. The Chassidish younger light that we're referring to, the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim, they lit a light around. They made lichtig in Yiddish Heiser, and they planted netirs toivos, good plantings, for generations to come. Ois Yud Zayin. Now the Friedrich Rebbe is going to continue and describe the close bond and tremendous love between Rabbeim and Chassidim, and this is also, when you read the context of the Farbrengen, of the Friedrich Rebbe's Farbrengen Chav Kislev, to describe the Mesiras Nefesh the Alter Rebbe had for Chassidim's Avodah Pnimis. That's why he put himself through this entire imprisonment. As the Friedrich Rebbe said earlier, that he could have, he was a balabas over the entire situation and could have avoided it totally had he not wanted to come through Derech HaTeva and bring and introduce this Derech HaAvodas Hashem through Pnimius. So, Leinen Dibburim from the Rabbeim, when you read letters from Rabbi Seim Messiinu, whether they're mechtavim, general letters, or they're private letters to Chassidim, you will see the tremendous love and passion that Rabbeim had to the Chassidim. This Ava, that he says that generally the most powerful love known is the love people have to their children. And the truth is that love, what's known in the world as that mighty love, is kloich shivi. It can't even be compared. It pales in comparison and has no value when being compared to the love that the Rebbe loves a chassid. He says it's known the Maisa that the Alter Rebbe had a machla, had a sickness with his nose, and from time to time pieces of flesh like that would fall off. And the doctor said that what causes this is the tremendous yearning that he has to something. And the Friedrich Rebbe says you should know that is nichsafa b'gam kol so nafshi. It's the Alter Rebbe's yearning, so to speak, dissipating his soul, thirsting out towards, as we'll see now, towards other chassidim and helping them their avodas Hashem. In addition to that gufa being a mesiras nefesh of his, because that came at the expense of him putting aside or not thinking about his love for the Eibishter, which that itself required mesiras nefesh. Let's see it inside. Amar Chakat Admar Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek said that as all mesiras nefesh from them Zayd, all his self-sacrifices, Alter Rebbe, are kiloi, are for naught, when compared to the mesiras nefesh that he had to rip himself away from the imchalei chafatzti, that anything other than you, the Eibishter, I don't want, and upgeben sich, and he had to apply himself to do a favor for a yid, and to want that a yid should do tshuva b'koyach atzmai. He himself should come to recognition that he has to raise himself up and be a oived elikim be'emes, like we said in the Zemes L'Yakov. Ois Yud Ches. The Friedrich Rebbe, in the continuation of the Farbrengen, spoke a lot about the love the brotherly love that has to exist between Chassidim. And he said, Ich bin ma'oyer Chassidim, I awaken and aroused by Chassidim, und bet Chassidim, I beg Chassidim, that they should get more and more tied together, more flowing and tzneif getragen, be able to zukommen zwischen sich, work out between each other. Bechlal a yid has to be held in a very precious regard, and Chassidim between themselves, like family, in specific. He says, is it proper that they should meet each other erst 3 months later to find out that by a friend of theirs there was a simcha? Hashem Yisbarach Shataka helps, as the Friedrich Rebbe, they should always be able to bear good news and to receive good news. But close brotherly love means you find out right away, you care, you look into what's happening by your friend. Tmimim befrat, says the Friedrich Rebbe, and in general Chassidim that grew up in the haven, and this means the shmarim, it seems like the dregs of Avos Yisrael, the gebek, they have to and they must be warmer. Their other chassid has to take a very, very valuable space in our heart. His simcha is my simcha, and my simcha has to be his simcha, to share our simchas. He brings a living example to this, and he says that when it became known in Lubavitch that Reb Chanya Marazov, which was from the Tmim in Lubavitch, he was an 18-year-old, he was released from the army. The famous chassid Reb Hendel, Chanoich Hendel Kugel, which was a chassid Bechlal, the Rebbe Marash, and in high regard by the Rebbe Rashab, as we're going to see, he felt comfortable coming into the Rebbe Rashab's Yechidus room. He went out to the Chatzar as if this was his own simcha, illustrating what the Friedrich Rebbe just said. He went out and he started singing Chanya Zarois. Chanya was released. Chanya is out, and he made a beeline straight to the Rebbe Rashab's Yechidus room. And here, the Friedrich Rebbe adds that he was from the very chashav in the eyes of the Rebbe Rashab, and he told the Rebbe Rashab that Chanya Marazov was released from his duty to go to the army, and he started independently dancing in the Rebbe Rashab's room. Friedrich Rebbe says, I was in the room. I guess the Friedrich Rebbe was talking to Rebbe Rashab. Rebbe Rashab was sitting behind the table. He got up and placed his hand on the shoulder of Rebbe Handel, that was dancing, and he danced with him. He took for 3 circles, and then he said, for this, I'm going to tell you Chassidus. That's how precious it is by the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi the love between Chassidim, and this is an example for how deep the emotions and the sharing of Simchas art should be between Chassidim and Tmim. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, one has to hold precious every Yid, and Befrat Chassidim, and those that stem from Chassidim. Those are like family. And we need to help each other, each one, in whatever way possible. But he says now, and now all of a sudden we would assume this in the Gashmis, because he says each help should be in a way with wisdom, that it shouldn't embarrass your friend. And now he teaches us all of a sudden that it's talking about Ruchnias. You have to know how to rebuke and how to chastise the other, not to make his tsar greater. He says, because that person knows himself, and it hurts him, his own heart as well, his current state. And therefore you have to know how to be mekar of that person, by pulling a finger and then a hand. However, between you and yourself, you have to cry well and good for that person's negative state, for his bad that's in him, and say a kapitel tillim. Ois Yud Ches. Friedrich Rebbe now describes the character of a chassid of old. He says a lot of thought, little bit of speaking, but much more done, and all within yourself. That means taking responsibility on your own, not blaming. This is the essence of the chassid of Amol. A Rebbe, he describes, and this is obviously before the Nesius, once went into his Rebbe for Yechidus. And that Rebbe answered him and said, your avodah is ton mitzich, to do with yourself. And now that Rebbe told the next Rebbe to be how he can impact others by maning von sich. This is seemingly a continuation to what he described, alt mitzich. And he said, der v'noizlim, which refers to personal intellect, but it's like water. V'noizlim in Levanon, it refers to bina, but it trickles down. He says, zol veren breiter, if you broaden it, he says, sorry, that avodah has to be do with yourself till the other person will take it personal. And he says, the v'noizlim zol breiter veren, the v'noizlim, the intellect that you're deepening within your mind, should become broader. And he brings an example, kamashal ha'ikar. This is similar to an example of a peasant, that he brings chitim, he brings wheat to grind and to turn into flour. He thinks with his simplicity and his being gullible that the nezel, the nose, which is the place where the flour actually comes out of the mill, that's what produces the flour. But the toichin, the person that runs the mill, he knows that you pour in from the hole on top. That's where you put the chitin, the grain, the kernels of wheat, and then it's going to be able to produce from the nezel, from the spout at the bottom. It's going to be able to produce flour. And similarly, you as a rabbi and as a chassid needs to know that if you'll do with zich enough and deep enough, then there's going to be the tzveitiv at their head, and it's going to impact another. However, the rabbi told the future rabbi, but there's one condition, that you have to make sure what you're putting in on top is real wheat kernels and not sand. You have to put in quality. If you pour in sand, it's not going to produce any flour. And therefore, chassidus has to be to yourself without any psharas, without any compromise. Bichdei, in order that ultimately the piece of bread that will actually reach your mushpaim should be lechem lahachis, should be bread that can give vitality, give sustenance, give life. Chassidus man nit nar heron nor der heron. In general, chassidus demands not only to listen, but to listen in a primistic way. Der heron, and not just to understand in a deep way what's being said, but to feel the Getlichkeit that's within what's being transmitted. Their hair Torah and their hair another Yid. The final Ois Chaf. Now the Friedrich Rebbe is going to relate, obviously in the context of Yutes Chaf Kislev, that the Misnagdim today are doing a disservice to their predecessors, to the Misnagdim in the Alter Rebbe's times, because they have long regretted their mistake, and it pains them to see those people going their ways. So Dr. Misnagdim, those that are today, they oppose Chassidus, whether with their actions or their words against Chassidim, and they're using the ancient Nosach, you should know that they are painting the neshamas of the Go'inim Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, at which point now they are in the land of life, means the Olam Haba. Because Al Tizkar Lana Avaynos Rishonim, we always ask to not remind us of our first wrongdoings, our Averis. Now that they're in Olam Emes, they have tremendous regret for their past, and the fact that they let themselves be led by those looking to quarrel, Machachar Riv, and people that were just disseminating lies and gossip about Chassidim. So now, those that are against Chassidim, and they cause Chilukei Deis and arguments and Machlokes, they are with their ways not only Mitzar Chassidim, but they're Pashut Mitzar, the Neshamas of those Ga'onim that they're seemingly trying to follow in their ways. Hashem Yivarach Tzam Hashem, may the Eibishter bless us with peace. Friedrich Rebbe Ois Chaf Aleph says, Friedrich Rebbe turned to those that were near him, and the young ones, young Chassidim. Friedrich Rebbe said that he heard that something wondrous just happened. There was ice that carried away the bridge. There was a river called Dvina near Riga, and in those winter days, Kislev time, there's layers of ice, and it swept with the gush. It knocked down and carried away the bridge. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, when I heard this, so it was news for me that a bridge has to be afraid of cold weather. He says, as that something that the cold itself, that weather could break the bridge. He says, now listen, you youngsters, listen closely. You are the bridge, because you're the ones that connect and bridge from the children to the older ones. Remember that a bridge has to have a special guard from kaltkeit, from cold. The cold, chas v'shalom, it can't break the cold should not chas v'shalom break the bridge and break your ability to transmit the chassidus from the older generation to the younger children. He says, Zait varim, ensure that you're warm with Torah, you're warm with kiyum mitzvahs, and the bridge should stay whole. The Eibishter should help that all should go in the right direction, to the right direction, and the Eibishter will grant success. The final ois of this Farbringen, ois chav Beis, Friedrich Rebbe said, it's by me a tremendous simcha to see how young Galite gather together and learn in a group. He says there's zriya and there's netiya. There's planting of vegetation, and then there's planting netiyas of trees. He says both of them have to exist. Zriya, which is like vegetables and greenery, that's limud hanigla. Chassidus is netiya, is planting of trees. It's quoted from the Rebbe Rashab that Chassidus demands and requires much more preparation and toiling and preparing oneself in order for the chassidus to take root. Therefore, it's much more like a tree as opposed to vegetables. There is a vart of chassidim about this. I heard from Rabbi Matel Kozliner that chazed over that one of the things Friedrich was referring to, I guess that's the way chassidim took it, that vegetables every time has to be renewed, and as opposed to chassidus, that's like planting of trees. Rabbi Hussein put in tremendous efforts. It demands much more efforts, but then afterward they're standalone. They're long-lasting. They don't need to be always reminded and always reproduced. Says the Friedrich Rebbe, they both have to exist. Zriya, planting of vegetation, is learning nigla, and chassidus is planting trees. He says, as farvartel zich, it takes root, deep roots for children and for grandchildren. And he says, same too with avas and the brotherly love and brotherly discussions. He says, strengthen yourself, Yedideinu Anash. One another should help each other to ensure that they establish Kvisat and Torah, and Verbringings, where they reden sich zusammen like friends, friendly discussions. The Eibusher should help all of us together. B'soich Klal Yisrael, b'schus our fathers, Rabbi Seinu HaKadoshim, Zecher Tzadik Katzvach Nishmasam begins in Ram Schusim Yagalenu, and he should grant us the schus, the merit to receive Psuros Tovis, Begashmis, and Beruchnis.